2024 will forever remain stuck and glued in the minds of especially those deeply and passionately interested in, enthralled by, and of course intrigued with the global politics. As recently as last week, world leaders, including ours, gathered in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro not just to enjoy the view of the beaches like the popular Copacabana beach and or the traditional herbal tea known as mate, something that some might seriously think about considering, but to worry about the multiple uncertainties facing the world, including the return of Donald J. Trump. There in Rio, one of the most influential figures who, to use this funny phrase, served as a celebrity is no other than Narendra Damodar Das Modi, the Indian Prime Minister. He, indeed, prior to his arrival in Brazil, was in Nigeria, where he received a grand welcome and a red carpet treatment, and then conferred with the highest honor of GCON, meaning the Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger. Prime Minister Modi's visit has been viewed and described as a diplomatically advantageous move by the world's most populous nation to try and get some influence in Nigeria and then spread it out to other parts of the continent. With the putative win-win bilateral relations, Nigeria is predicted to benefit from them in many different ways, like in agriculture, security, healthcare, and education. Indians, whose number is roughly around 60,000, have been described as the second biggest employers of Nigerians after the federal government. Nigeria is India's largest trading partner in Africa with bilateral trade of nearly $12 billion in 2022. For those of you like us, keenly and painstakingly paying a microscopic attention to the world happenings, you may have glimpsed that Narendra Modi has asserted himself as a global icon, a powerfully charismatic figure to be reckoned with. But he has a mission, and in this currently muscular world order, where might is right, Mr. Modi's diplomatic approach is something worthy of emulation by our leaders. First of all, India under Narendra Damodar Das Modi is eyeing a seat at the United Nations Security Council, something supported heavily by the critics of the UN's status quo. And for India's ambition to be fulfilled, countries like ours, whose leaders are accused of subjecting them to being puppets of those outside powers who can and do throw some handouts to them, need to be behind it and show a great deal of support. Then there is China. It indubitably is true, beyond any shred of doubt or question, that China is seen as a country that has silently beaten the West in terms of influence in Africa. China has been Africa's largest trading partner for over a decade, and the two regions have seen a steady increase in trade over the past 2 decades. In 2023, according to IMF, the total trade volume between China and Africa reached a record $282 billion. And China has got a lot of investments in Africa and does not seem to care about pumping more money into the continent. Even though critics of China are saying Africa should be worried because we all know that there is no free lunch, as they say. Well, we're not talking about Sino-Africa relations, not yet. It should be a topic for another day. But regarding this, there are theories indicating that India can be or is even being used by the West to counter China, because China's rise is perceived by the Americans as a threat to America. So, Who other than the Chinese neighbor that has had a long-standing border dispute can be incited to challenge it, even though the Indians can dispute that simply because of their policy of non-alignment and strategic autonomy as their stance, meaning Prime Minister Narendra Modi can go to Moscow, hug his friend Vladimir Putin, and replicate the same gesture in Kyiv or Kiev, depending on the one you prefer, and also get a red carpet treatment in Washington, D.C. That, diplomatically speaking, is an advantage to the Indians, and it takes a great deal of courage, charisma, and strategy for someone to do it. And of course, it is a significant lesson for African leaders. Well, at the heart of all this complex and intricate world lies the channels on or through which we experience a smooth or rough flow of narratives and counter-narratives. The media, especially the state-owned and even some privately owned ones, indeed of any country, must be, as it is the tradition, the propagators of their country's propaganda. Therefore, consuming one media outlet will only make one cultivate a specific worldview, and so having a wise multiplicity of media consumption while detaching one's bias and prejudice will enormously help one understand the direction and trajectory this world is moving at this turbulent time. So, an important lesson for Nigerian media to learn from the Indian media is trying to own your story, though with a slight improvement. The Indian media think, if not believe, that the Western media have been putting out narratives against them, painting them black and portraying them as people who are on a mission of desecularizing India and making it a country for Hindus and Hinduism only, a gravely contentious issue disputed seriously by the Indians. Modi, despite all the goodies mentioned earlier and his attachment to Bollywood stars, which has made him more or less like a political celebrity, will never be detached from the 2002 Gujarat massacre that claimed the lives of more than 1,000 people, many of whom Muslims, in a terribly bloody communal conflict. I am Omar Isa Dandagu, and this is The Monologue.